In this episode, I'm journeying deep into the backcountry of Utah to a canyon that had ancient people living in it from about 10,000 years ago right up until the 1800s. It's a beautiful site with petroglyphs spanning the millennium. It's got so much rock art. I was going out here right around sunset and had one specific Pueblo that I was targeting to reach. I intend to come back to this canyon because it has so many Pueblos and dwellings along its full length. It was the perfect time of year to go, in the beginning of October, when the air was finally cool and the bugs were not so bad, and you were just barely starting to get the beautiful fall colors. All these cottonwood trees along the river are a sure sign that you are in a good habitable place. Anywhere in the Southwest that you see cottonwood trees is a good place for people to find a way to live. And anciently, people did just that. I traveled for many hours on this dirt road, and eventually I finally made it to my destination, an isolated Pueblo in an opening in this normally otherwise dense canyon. Hello everybody, Ben Woodruff here, and on today's video we're visiting a Pueblo out in the middle of nowhere in Utah. And we're in a canyon, and this canyon has tons of ruins in it all along it. This is my first time visiting this canyon. There's petroglyphs, there's so many sites going back, over 1,000 years all the way to just over 100 years ago. This particular Pueblo is kind of neat because there's an intact Kiva, and I want to see what kind of masonry there is, because I hear it's got some unique masonry. It was excavated by Brigham Young University back in the day, but usually with archaeology, you don't completely excavate a site. You dig a trench and you kind of map out an area and you dig those areas and you see, here's a sampling of what's here, then you bury it back up. So it looks like it's not completely in great shape, but there's a lot that's underground. And so you have to visualize. When it comes to Pueblos, most Pueblos that are not like a great house. If it's not a Chacoan outlier, you'll have like 5 rooms in a Kiva, 10 rooms in a Kiva, 12 rooms in a Kiva. This site has 3 Kivas apparently, but on the Google Maps, I can only see the one. So it'll be interesting. We're just gonna take a look at this and kind of get a better idea of it. So coming up here, they've got barbed wire fence just around the ruins itself to keep the cattle out, because there are actively cattle in this canyon. But looking at this masonry, we are pretty high up, and if I'm looking down here, this looks like that we're already like at least 1 story up. So I think that I'm actually standing right now on a debutage field, and this just has not been reassembled. But these are some pretty standard sized Pueblo rooms. Oh, looks like this looks like a little modern path coming up here. So I'm climbing up on here, and as I'm looking behind me, all of this right here has signs of structure. Looking out here even beyond, you can see there's sort of mounds. There is a lot here that is unexcavated, and so this, if you can see the outlines. If you can see them, you can see that these structures went much further. But we are checking out this part right here. You can see how tall some of these rooms are, but they're not huge. That's maybe 6 feet by 12 feet. But it looks like over 8 feet tall when it was in existence. And you see, this is a ventilation hole for this Kiva, so there can be a fire inside. Before we go inside, I want to look around a little more outside here. Looking at this place, if you can see behind me, all around this whole area, this canyon was quite narrow, except for where we are. Where we are, it opens up quite a bit, and this is conducive for agriculture. Because you see, the thing is, these were partly agrarian people, and corn from Mexico played a big role in things. You got to have as much sunlight as you can in order to grow your corn, and so it makes sense that this huge open section in this narrow wash would be the best place for them to make a community here. But again, looking down here, you can get a better view. These are actually, for a Pueblo, these are pretty sizable rooms. There's a door here. Not very big. Again, we think we have to have these enormous doors nowadays. But yeah, you can see, oh geez, all over here, this entire hill. This is, you can see the rubble, you can see collapsed structures, you can see it all out here. So this Pueblo, all here, all here, all here, all this whole area, this all had structure as well. And this is what's still intact. Now the interesting thing about this masonry, and sometimes you see what you want to see, but this style looks vaguely like Chacoan type of masonry, Chacoan architecture, with the big and the little stones together. Now, as far as I know, this particular Pueblo is not a Chaco outlier, but the masonry does look a bit like what we see in Chaco Canyon. So if you visit a site like this, oh, there's a lizard running right across right there. Yeah, he's too small. Looks like a desert iguana, like a baby. Anyway, sorry. If you look at this wall, and this is maybe 5 feet tall, this sediment's built up. But if you can see, this is all debutage. All of this here, this was so much taller. And again, there's more structures over here. This is a much larger site than it shows on Google Earth. Now, I know that there are said to be 3 kivas here. This is the only kiva I'm seeing. So I'm wondering if we look up the archaeological report, then maybe what we would see is that indeed they've already mapped out. Maybe they've done LiDAR here and found, because I'm only seeing 1 kiva. But this is a much bigger community than I thought. There's a lot of rooms. The masonry is pretty good. So let's go inside this kiva. Let's take a look in here. Tripod fell down, and there's the lizard. It's not a desert iguana. It looks like it might be a whiptail. He's cute though. He's like, I'm gonna go hide under your tripod. One of the things that I want to point out is when you're on top of a kiva like this, we don't normally see kivas like this. Normally, if you see a kiva, the top no longer exists, and you just have this really cool circular pattern with sections for posts around the bottom. One thing that's forgotten is that this area on top of a kiva is also a space. And from the descendants of some of these Puebloan people, we understand that this also is an area where things are done. Maybe from just domestic things like grinding corn, hanging out, weaving a basket, to social time. You would have dances, and some tribes still do today. On top of the kiva, they will have dances. So this is a social area, and it's a neat area. From this angle, I can see all around on the cliffs. It's a social spot, and we don't think of that nowadays because most kivas are not intact. So I would be underground. And I think it's important to remember, when we're trying to understand how these people lived in the past, we need to understand that this area on top of a kiva was a social space, in addition to the space we're going to go down in. this is incredible. This is the biggest kiva that I've ever been in that isn't a great kiva. And great kivas were, much larger and had 4 posts. But this has the standard masonry all around the outside to support these beams going up. And I can stand, there's another foot or 2 above my head. So this is an incredibly large kiva. And you could hold a lot of people in here. But again, we know that kivas were sacred spaces, but the descendants of some of these Puebloan people have also told us that kivas were also a social space. And it depends on the tribe, on the clan, but that it wasn't just for ceremony only. That there were times also, some have told us even in the winter time that, hey, it's warmer down here. It's better to stay than in the Pueblos up above. But we got to take a look at some of this. The masonry all around the side. This is what people get wrong on kivas. If you see a kiva that is not intact or rebuilt, everybody thinks that these are chairs or something, but it's like, no, these hold up the layers and layers of the posts. And again, you have normally either 1 or 2 of these sections here. You have a fireplace. You can kind of see the hearth. It's pretty dark in here right now because sun's almost setting out here. And you have this trough, and oftentimes you have one on the other side as well. Now this right here is where the air comes in. You can see there's a nice black widow nest in there. But there's a chimney. Well, it's not a chimney. Sorry, it's an air vent. It's the opposite of a chimney. The smoke comes from the fire right here. And this fire goes up. And it sucks air in from down here. And this rock right here, you have either one big rock or multiple rocks building a barrier here. So that when the air gets sucked in from here, that it stops and doesn't blow your fire and put it out. So this is an air vent for things coming in. Well, I just noticed a mono. And that's pretty cool. It's an artifact. Look at this right here. So this is just a rock, but this is for grinding corn. You have a smaller rock on top called a metate, and you can grind corn, nuts and seeds, other things in there. But somebody, a little over 1,000 years ago, used this to grind corn and to feed their family. I think that's pretty incredible. Now there's other holes as well. You can see right here, as well as right here. Different tribes tell me different things. I've heard that some of these are ritual holes, that they are meant to have, help spirits come in or spirits go out. Some of them have been used as additional air holes. And on some bigger kivas in some locations, these are actually kind of like false doors so that you can have ceremonial beings come in, like literal people in costume come in at specific times. These are way too small for that. But again, look at this masonry. This is what I'm saying. This right here, this is a bit more Chacoan in its design, with the mix of the big and the small rocks. This has a pretty big door. There's a modern post here, but this one's a little harder to get in and out. The one that I usually go in, it's got a smaller door, but the angle of the ladder is easier. Every kiva is a little bit different, but we always see on regular kivas, not great kivas, these beams and then this pattern of logs stacked up to make a roof overhead. Any chance I ever have to go in a kiva, it's always a special experience. Again, this is a structure that is cooler in the summer, warmer in the winter, but it's also kind of metaphorically going into the underworld. Now we know for these people, we know that the Puebloans in earlier days originally had pit houses that were half above ground, half below ground. And then around 180, they started making their kivas totally below ground and making adobe pueblos above ground near them. So we see the shift. So archaeologically speaking, it seems that this is a way to still hold on to that past of still having a pit house, a place where you enter on a ladder from above. But this is just so beautiful to experience, and it's so peaceful. It's such a beautiful space. I think that's something we're lacking today. We live in this world with gray rectangles and artificial lights blasting at our faces. And I really do think if people had a chance to spend a time in a space like this, maybe by a fire, having it be peaceful, I think it would do so much for our modern day mental health. But we don't. We're bombarded by all these artificial things and so much stimulus for our brains. Just being down here automatically as I go underground, I feel like the weight of the world is staying up there with me. And I've said it before in other videos. I think it's very similar to what some people do. If maybe if you go into a Catholic cathedral and it's busy, bustling outside, and then you go inside and it's dark and there's these big, bright, beautiful stained glass windows and casting, beautiful light. And anytime there's light coming in from a kiva, it's always so beautiful. It's remarkable, and it always does my heart good. So I wanted to share that with you. That's why I drove hundreds of miles to middle of nowhere to let you experience yet another kiva. So I hope seeing this kiva was good for your soul. But I'm going to go back up, and we're going to go take a look around the rest of this Pueblo. Came out. Oh, there's another one. So they're just coming over to say hi. Hope you can see him. There's this one over here. I just came out of the kiva and I just kind of reached around. This is narrow. If you see here, this is narrow to get in and out of. Most kivas, the angle of this ladder is not what they usually are. Usually they're at a steeper angle. So I came out and just kind of reached my tripod around there, and these two lizards were just waiting to say hi to me. I always love seeing the wildlife out here. So this is one of the things. We always say adobe. And we say this is an adobe structure. But really what adobe is the clay in between the rocks. And if you look closely, you can still see the fingerprints all through. It's always the case. You always can, but it's just really neat to see and just to think, somebody just dabbed this in. I can't, where's my hand? There it is. Just right here, you can just see the doom, 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 doom. Just those little fingerprints. We always say this. We always like to point this out because it's fun to know that a tangible human did this, as opposed to just thinking in nebulous archaeological terms. The ancestral Puebloan people. It's nice to think, no, this was an individual with a life. On a structure like this room right here, I mean, this is totally filled in with sediment. I don't know if this has been excavated or not. God, there are lizards everywhere. They are running all over this place. But I mean, this right here, I mean, that's a room. That's not ground level. That's a room. There's another lizard right there. They're running all over this place. You can see the wall a little better now. You can see this door. I mean, that's not a door to the outside, because this is a room right here. So that would have, this might have just been a storage room. Look down, and we have a little piece of black on white pottery, little ancient ceramic. It's pretty neat. And again, looking over here, these piles, these are former structures. Now this over here, this kind of looks like, where archaeologists were doing some screening. But see, these don't. These still look like a structure. But if they're digging, then you sift things through, you put it through a screen, and you sift out and you see what you can find. And sometimes those tiny little bits will tell you the most information. But this, where this mostly looks uniform in sediment, I think this is just the debris field left by the archaeological dig. But these over here and over here all look like adobe structures. You can see from this angle, I mean, this is actually a sizable site. It's had a lot of structures, and there would have been a fair number of people living here. But again, people were living up and down all through this canyon, absolutely everywhere. Again, looking from above, this hillside right here, this is all structures that have collapsed down. So you're walking up, you're actually walking on rooms until you come to what looks like an outer wall. But this is still, I mean, these were additional rooms right here. Here's an item. This is a lithic. I'm a flint knapper, and I recognize this. This is some nice chert. So this is leftovers from making arrowheads, spearheads, stone tools. This is a core that was chucked by the wayside, but it was still touched by human hands. And there's another lithic down there. This looks like this is the same material. It's a bit glassier. Some expert pressure flaking there. Another doorway there. But again, nothing lasts forever. And you can see how these walls just degrade. Gravity, water, earthquakes, time, nothing lasts forever. But again, when we pull away, I'm still walking on the structures. You can see this is all unexcavated. This entire hillside right here, you can see the rows, you can see the stones. This goes down to ground level. So there were structures here too. And the adobe clay on top has just washed down over the top and knocked them down. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed visiting this Pueblo with me, and I very much appreciate you watching and supporting the channel. If you haven't already, if you could hit subscribe, it really helps me to keep this channel up and going. And always remember that life is a gift. So never stop learning and never stop exploring. We'll see you next time.